to the black belt seats, right? And in that geographic area, you still have these same conditions which you spoke about requiring a program like the Urban Renewal Program. Now that you're in opposition, how do you going to affect change where, in many cases, the bulk of your support remains?
Well, two things. First of all, we've got to keep the pressure up on the government. I see they're trying to scrap the Urban Renewal Program. That's a mistake. They're calling in the police from Urban Renewal. Urban Renewal had, in my view, a direct contact or connection with the lessening of crime. Very important in community policing. So that's a mistake. The housing people have been called back in. Social services has been they've been called back in as well. So the program is it appears like it's going to the scrap heap. So we have to continue that program. But in terms of what we do for these areas as an opposition party, apart from that pressure, I think that someone like myself, for example, I'm trying to see if I can find resources from foundations and from the private sector to actually help people with the reconstruction of their homes and to make sure that there's internal plumbing. And I'll tell you this, the other thing which I found interesting about this campaign is some surveys were done, internal surveys were done just before the last election. And one of the important indicators that came up was that jobs, not crime, not immigration, jobs. That was the #1 issue. It emerged a couple of weeks before the campaign. And I thought to myself, why is that? I remember during the first 5 years as a member of Parliament, there were all these requests from people who wanted to join the public service. And join the public service in entry-level jobs like janitresses, filing assistants. These are jobs which, in some cases, call for a minimum qualification of 5 BJCs. So it took a long time, again, to get a handle on this, and perhaps too long. And in the end, we came up with this Operation Second Chance program, which would allow people to come in as general service workers and then get trained up to an equivalency certificate after 2 years. And then you can get in the track to get on to becoming these people would come on as permanent and pensionable, but to become clerks and senior clerks to go up that sort of track. Now I understand that program has been stopped. The Prime Minister says that he stopped 100 of these people coming on. And there's a feeling in this administration, the present administration, which harks back to what they said before, that these market forces ought to prevail and people ought to not be working for the government and the government is too large. But I'll tell you, I saw people's lives transformed by these minimum wage jobs in the government. And I think that you have to really give pause when you come into office and say that these people at the lowest rungs of the ladder should not get an opportunity, which I believe only the government can provide.
Mr. Mitchell, the FNM government is clearly of the view that the people who were hired very late and were hired by your government simply as a means to win the general elections, that you were using the employment of these 100 people to get votes. How do you respond to that?
Gee, that's a real surprise for a politician to do that, eh? But I wouldn't be that cynical. Obviously, there's a political benefit whenever you make any decisions in government because you're obviously trying to get reelected. What I would say is it's an honest program. It was carefully thought out, carefully designed within the Ministry of the Public Service, and we tried to do it as quickly as we could. And the fact is, it was close to the general election.
Why wasn't it done earlier?
That's always the million-dollar question in the Bahamas, is why can't you do things earlier? And I would say this, it's probably safest for me to say, because I don't want to be jumping on the bureaucracy too much. I would just say is that if I got a second opportunity, the question would be, how do you get on top of the bureaucracy so they can execute policies as quickly, more quickly and as quickly as possible? But the fact is, it's a good program, and I would also remind you that we were faced as a government when we came in 2002 with the same issue, where they gave jobs to 300 people, but not on the permanent and pensionable. See, this is to put people on a career path. This was no temporary job fix, where in 2002 they hired people for 3 months. So it was a cynical exercise that was entirely designed to assist them in the 2002 general election. And I remember when those contracts, the time of those contracts ran out, we were then in the administration, and scores of people were downstairs at the cabinet office. But one thing I could say is that the Bahamian people, under the Christie administration, always knew that they were free to petition their leaders wherever they were, and that they would have their cries answered when those petitions were made, wherever it was. Never turned away and never insulted, because we always believed that people had to have access to us. And our job was to say yes, not no, if we could.
But you don't think that that is still the case today? Clearly, the F&M government must have learned something from the mistakes they made prior to 2002.
Well, we've yet to see it, because the first act was to get rid of some people and to send this message of fear throughout the whole system. And the people I'm most concerned about, of course, are these 100 people who he says he stopped these applications. I'm not sure whether they are the Operation Second Chance, but I can only imagine that they are. And I'm saying these are people down at the bottom rungs of the ladder. They're the least of these, and I think that those are people who need to be protected, and not attacked, and there shouldn't be fear spread over those amongst that group of people.
Mr. Mitchell, you've had the opportunity to look at the public sector up close and personal, and you made the point that the bureaucracy didn't respond in many instances the way in which you would like to see it. Why wasn't some reforms introduced during the Christie government to try and change the modus operandi of the public service?
Well, I think reforms were introduced. The question is whether they were extensive enough. This is a very conservative society. And I found, as a minister of the government, that in so many instances, what people like to do is to talk the language of change. But when it came to changing, there was always a choke point. So it was not as easy as it seems. But the fact is we have to live with the decisions that we took or failed to take. And you build on that and hope that you get a second opportunity to do so. There are some things which you'd want to do differently. But the whole question in the Bahamas is execution. I would say that when I was foreign minister and I had the opportunity to attend one of these summits of the Americas on behalf of the Prime Minister. And I know that they were talking about how long it takes to go into business in this country. And we wanted to agree to measures that would cut the time to going into business to 30 days. When they say you compare Canada, it's seven days, in the United States it's 3 days. Over here it's more like 6 months. And so why is that? And there's something in our education, our culture, our mindset that says that there has to be all this bureaucracy and paperwork and so on and so forth as protections. Now, in opposition, we'll have a lot more freedom to look at those issues. And of course, I'm certain that, as soon as we say this thing, everybody will be jumping back, well, you had 5 years to do it. Well, that's true, and we live with that. But the fact is, we're going forward. And you learn from whatever mistakes you made and whatever experiences you had. And as I say, not a backward glance.
Public sector reform, Minister, you said there were some changes.
Mainly through the help of the Bahamas Public Services Union, where we signed this significant agreement between